Please, once introduce Ken for us.
Okay. Am I going to stand the whole time?
No.
Okay.
While you're standing, kindly introduce yourself and tell us the kind of fashion that you create, and then start on your topic.
Okay. So, real quick, my name is Monty PP Data Collins, and I'm personally known as Monty O's because that's my showbiz name. I'm a television host, a PR expert, fashion blogger, traveling adventure reporter, and a lifestyle writer. So, I'm like a whole book within the media industry, and I own my private PR company that operates between Johannesburg, South Africa, and then Ghana. But I'm Dominican by birth. So,
Dominican?
Yeah, Dominican Republic from Barahona. Almost my whole life because I fully moved here in 2001. And since then, I've been working between the continent of Africa. So real quick, my topic will be very brief because I'm the kind of person who actually love to read or write down my points and then come and read. It won't look original. So real quick has a very important role to play as far as fashion journalism has emerged as part of the fashion business in Africa right now. And how do we do that? We actually gather and present people who are not within the fashion industry about information of the fashion industry, counting from designers, models, photographers, and what the fashion industry in Africa has to offer. Right now, the media landscape is growing, and we are trying to migrate from the traditional media, which is the newspaper, that is one vibrant tools the young ones use right now. So, for example, if I should write a publication on a designer, let's say Ajepoma, if I should do a publication on her, and I decide to just publish that on a platform which is most driven by the traditional media. On our level, how many people actually have time to purchase newspapers, magazines, or even have a whole lot of time to sit down and read a whole feature in a magazine? But when it's on the internet, boom, it's on your phone. If I should broadcast it on WhatsApp, and I have over 200 people on my contact, boom. Out of the 200, I am very much assured that over 60% out of my 200 contacts will actually have access to the said article. So the other role of the media is, personally, I play a stand role for the Durban Fashion Fair hosted by the eThekwini Municipality, which is a government-owned fashion week in South Africa, Durban, as a West African PR and a stringer. And the job of a stringer is actually to recognize photographers, fashion influencers, and also models who are actually not within the sector I operate. So I bring in designers from East and West Africa to showcase in South Africa. That is my job as a stringer. And my PR part is to communicate when the fashion weeks are opening, when models are supposed to cast, or the information that needs to be communicated to people who are actually not within that belt of fashion industry. Now, what we also do as media is designers come up with lookbooks and try to create a new trend for themselves. And how do they communicate that? You need a publicist or a PR. Most people go like, oh, publicists are expensive, PRs are expensive, we can't pay them and stuff like that. It's not like you can pay them, but it's about knowing your niche as a designer or a fashion mogul that you want to be, to create a proper brand plan for yourself. We as a media or a PR expert actually create brand promises for you as a designer or as a fashion brand to stand tall in the midst of a million. We have over 20 million, of fashion designers working among us, but how do you, make yourself stand out within this 2 million? How do they do it? It's the role of the media. You can be the best designer in the world, but if we don't communicate your words or try to influence others to put their eyes on you or give a second thought about you to them to patronize what you do, there is no you as a bigger designer. everyone is big in his or her own council. So for the media, actually, we find so many techniques in inculcating what you people do as fashion influencers and designers to the public. So I'm not going to talk too much. If there is any question that most people want to ask in relation on how the media can, assist you as a model, assist you as a designer, assist you as a photographer, fashion influencer, to make a mark in the African fashion landscape, which is now growing. On the road, Nigeria now has the largest media market because they understand what the fashion holds, and they have fashion bloggers, fashion, media that is just set up to report on just fashion. But I think Ghana, we are gradually getting there, though we are few, but it's about time the designers know that whatever they want to do or whatever communication they want to put out there has to be channeled through a media. A model, a designer, a photographer needs a media rep, not necessarily you to pay the person to communicate your work. It's just based on relationships. I actually volunteer to promote several brands, several models, several individuals who want to make marks in the fashion industry through my small platform, and they earn what they look for. So every fashion influencer or designer in this industry actually deserves somebody to represent them as their publicist, and it's not necessarily somebody who actually know the rules of journalism and stuff. Any little publication on every new media platform counts. That's why I decided to switch people's idea from not publishing stuff on the local media, but rather try and capitalize on the social media aspect of what we do now to get people to know what you do. Everyone is a communicator. Everyone can act as a media. Thanks to Instagram, thanks to Facebook, thanks to Twitter. That is why brands now create social media pages. Every designer has a social media page. And on that page is a social media platform for you to do what? Promote yourself in a way. It's a platform Instagram and Facebook has created for you to market yourself within the media landscape. You don't necessarily need a proper media, agreement to sign to make your job work or to make your brand stand out. You are a media in your little own way within the new media circle. That is social media, Instagram, or whatever platform you use to promote your brand. So this is the little stuff that I'm going to share with you on the role of the media. And always remember, yeah, in case I did not point out something that you were thinking or assuming for me to point out, do reflect on what I've said, and then you can ask after everyone has spoken. Yeah.
Okay, great. So up next, okay.
How many countries was invited to participate in this session?
Every country. Any country can participate. It's all about Africa, different fashion designers in Africa. And also those that are living in North America, South America, and in Europe. So it's the world. Okay, so next we'll have Ivy Prosper tell us about the connection between African fashion and North America. Please stand up.
Stand up.
Introduce yourself.
Introduce myself.
Give us a short introduction about you, the help, and then talk about your topic.
Sure. I wasn't expecting to stand up. Seriously, no. I wasn't expecting to stand up. I'm just talking to y'all. This is live. So if this phone falls, it's because my tripod is messed up. I do media too, and I do social media like you were just saying. So that's what it's all about, is social media. So I'll just hold this while I'm introducing myself. Is that okay? Does that work with you?
Yeah.
So my name is Ivy Prosper. I am a media professional, so I work in television, film production, mainly documentary film, as well as I'm a writer. I write script. I wrote a book called Your Essential Guide on Moving to Ghana, which is all about moving to Ghana. I have a blog, which is Life with Ivy. I also have a movement that I'm starting called Branding Fashion Africa, which is about promoting African fashion. I have always been all about promoting African designers, Black designers. I did do fashion design many, many years ago. I'm kind of older than some of you all, so I had a clothing line in the 90s. And now I'm going back to go do fashion, handbags, which I launched a few years ago, but I kind of abandoned it and have put my focus on my media work. So I always have had a vested interest in the fashion industry. The way the fashion industry is, should I sit now?
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can sit now, okay. All right, so I'll have a seat. So with the fashion industry in Ghana and Africa at large, I I know that the fashion industry, according to some statistics from 2015, the sub-Saharan Africa fashion industry is worth $31 billion. $31 billion. But we have challenges because there's not really a strong infrastructure bringing everything together. Trade between the countries is still challenging. So designers from, Senegal may have difficulty sending their stuff to Ghana or, to Morocco, whatever it may be. We have so many countries that have so many different cultures and so many different, fabrics and trends and things that people would love to see in other parts of the continent, but it's challenging to bring it all together. Now, my focus today is to talk about, I just wanted to mention that, but my focus today is talking about bridging with North America, so Canada, US, Caribbean. And I think that in the context of Ghana, let's say, because I have done some work with people here when I was doing my handbags, and one of the biggest challenges is with quality and craftsmanship. And I know that this comes up in a lot of fashion events that I've been a part of in Ghana, that I've attended, and it is a consistent thing that needs to be worked on in order for us to get our brands recognized, to increase our sales, because first impressions mean a lot. If you send out a product and there's something that's not quite right on the inside, because I've gone to tailors and seamstresses, I had people who were doing the bags for me and they'll say, "Oh, madam, it's the inside, nobody will care." And it's like, no, people care. The inside must be just as good and as well constructed as the outside. That's important. And so it's one of the things that I think is a training issue as well. So if people who are becoming seamstresses and tailors are being trained by someone who doesn't care about that, then they're just going to learn the same thing. So we have to find a way to develop our people to understand the importance of that. Now, once you get that all together, you have to figure out how you're getting your product out there. If you're not focusing on only Ghana or only Africa and you want to be international, you have to take the time to learn about international trade. You have to take the time to understand what are the expectations in each country you're delivering your product to. Because every country has their own rules and regulations, policies that you have to know, okay, this is what this country expects. This is what that country expects. So I must meet these standards if I'm going to ship my product to this country. You may have to change it to ship it to another country. And labeling, understanding that you have to label what is in the garment, because a lot of countries want to know what are the fabrics that are in the garment, what are the contents of the fabric in the garment. If you don't put that on there, there are some who will reject your product at delivery. Now you've spent money to send your product to another country and it's been rejected because you haven't met the standards. So it's important that you learn those things and understand what each country wants when you're shipping your product. The US and Canada are very similar with a lot of fashion trends. And I think it's important that you understand who your niche market is when you send your product. Don't just think, oh, well, it's nice, what I've done is great, everybody will love it. Because we've got a hugely competitive industry now when it comes to African fashion. The trends of seeing the prints, we're seeing in social media, everybody's doing very similar things. What makes your product different than someone else? What makes it distinctively, make someone want to spend their money on it versus something else? So when you think about like Nike versus Adidas, there's a reason somebody will choose to buy Nike over buying Adidas or buy Adidas over Nike. It's branding. One of the most successful brands right now that's getting a lot of attention from Ghana is Studio 189. The sustainability that they talk about, ethical fashion practices, those are things that people are concerned about in North America. I know people who they'll buy a $100 bag versus a $20 one because the $100 one, they're supporting this community in this particular country, or they're supporting women, they make sure that they don't have child labor, whatever those things are that that person's concerned with, they're willing to pay extra money because of that. So if you tell them our product is supporting A, B, and C, it's something that can distinguish you from someone else, right? And the consumers in North America are increasingly becoming concerned about that. You even have fast fashion retailers like H&M who are talking about sustainability, even though they're one of the companies that has a lot of issues. I'm not going to go into that topic, but they talk about sustainability as well. So I think that it's important that you take the time to research your product, who you're planning on selling it to when it comes to Canada, US, or the Caribbean. The beauty about the Caribbean is the Caribbean is so open to a lot of culture. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they are descendants of Africa, and there's a lot of African culture there. And then even between the islands, there's slight differences. So like Trinidad, you'll find a lot of Indian culture that's mixed in with African culture. So understanding the market you're selling to can also help you make decisions on what you're sending. So you can have a full range and you're only sending certain things to certain countries. That's okay because you understand the market. So for instance, when I worked in retail, I used to work as an assistant buyer, and I was responsible for stores in Canada and the US. And I would have to analyze spreadsheets as to what's selling in what market. So like a red shirt might be selling amazing in Toronto, but it's not in Los Angeles. So you have to understand what is working for which market. And then you say, okay, so when I make this product, I'm only sending this to these people, I'm only sending this to these people. What sells in New York doesn't necessarily sell in some small town in the US, but it'll sell in New York. What sells in Accra isn't necessarily gonna sell in Kutebwem in the Volta region, right? So you have to understand each market when you're selling your product and creating your product, and understand that it's a business. One of the things that us creative people, and I'm guilty of this too, that we forget all the time is that you're creative. Yes, your creations are beautiful, they're crafted well, but who's buying it? So we have to understand the business side. Figure out, okay, if you want to make $1,000, how many of these do I need to sell in order to make the $1,000, and in order to still be able to pay this person and pay this person and pay that person, and still have a little bit of money left over to pay myself, if there's any left to pay yourself, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. And I think for young people in the audience who may be starting out, one of the things that people forget is nothing is overnight. Instagram will make you think things are overnight and happens like that. Nothing happens overnight. People who are toiling and doing things, sometimes they've been doing it for 10 years before you hear about them. It could even take 20 years before you hear about them. Sometimes it just takes one lucky break of meeting the right person, and then it happens quickly because you met the right person. Like if you have someone who, you know, like there was a brand here, I think it's only been around for 5 or 6 years in Ghana, and Janet Jackson wore some of their pieces in her latest video. Now when that happens, then of course, boom, you blow up. You get Beyonce wearing something, boom, you blow up. But once you blow up, are you ready to satisfy demand? Because somebody could be like, I want that, and then boom, your site crashes. It happened to a Canadian brand. Meghan Markle wore a dress from a Canadian brand after her engagement with Prince Harry. And the website of this Canadian brand crashed because they could not support the amount of people who were trying to buy this particular dress that she wore. So be prepared for the demand if a big break like that happens. Or have your PR in place, have someone in place who can address challenges. Because if customers are not satisfied, you have to have somebody who can fix the situation by having like damage control to talk about why maybe you couldn't meet the demand and that you're working towards meeting the demand in the future. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to say in a nutshell as far as bridging between Africa and if you're trying to sell in the North American market and understanding the markets and all of that. So I do have a strong belief in the fashion, in the African fashion industry. And African fashion doesn't always mean you're using prints. As far as I'm concerned, it means it's made here, and it means an African designer made it, and that's it. Doesn't mean you have to use a printed fabric. If it's crafted by an African person who has created, that person is a person who has inspiration from here. You know, just because you're African doesn't mean you always use African prints. Because I think sometimes people think that that's what it means, that it means you always have to have the print. The prints are beautiful and wonderful and represent culture and lifestyle, but it's not the only part of who we are. And there are lots of other fabrics too that people don't look at, like the tie and dye fabrics, you know, some of the batik fabrics, some of the hand woven fabrics that don't get as much attention, you know? So it's important that we understand that. It's not just getting Blisco and Woodeen and those things. There's so much more to African design. Some of the Ethiopian designers, some of their work is just so beautiful. I don't know if any of you are familiar with some of the work, but it's all over this continent. There's so many different things that are coming out from each country that are just amazing and beautiful. So if you have any questions for me after, I think I've spoken for a long time. I'll cut it short so that the rest of our panel can also get a chance to put in their thoughts as well.
Okay, up next we have Avo, and he's going to talk about establishing networking structures in the world of African fashion. Avo, can you please stand up for us? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then go ahead with your topic.
Hi everyone. So my name is Avo Obufere. I run Model of Africa. I'm a co-partner for the Men's Fashion Week in Nigeria. I organize Lagos Accessories Fashion Week. I'm entertained called Zion International. So basically, I'm a fashion consultant. I'm also an entrepreneur. So I'm not in Africa. Yeah. So first and foremost, I'd like to say it's great to be here. I think this is an incredible platform that Nana has put together. And really, I believe at this stage, every one of us must understand and appreciate the fact that Africa has so much to offer. So enthusiastic about, I feel very enthusiastic about what we have to offer. I believe that one of the challenges that we've been having is feeling the need to get validation from the West. You know, at the end of the day, we should define our own beauty, we should define our own style. You know, I love what my colleagues have said. They brought stress on the few key points. One being the fact that even when you look in terms of fabrics, Africa goes beyond the prints. You know, so a lot of times, nobody can tell our own story as well as we as Africans should be able to tell our stories. And even the likes of fashion gurus like YSL have been able to draw inspiration from Africa. So I think to start with, we have so much to offer that we don't even realize. You know, so there's a need for us to relearn and probably unlearn some of the things that have held us where we presently are. Now I'm super excited about us being able to pull our strengths together. You know, for me, one of the things that I enjoy about opportunities like this is I get to learn new things. So traveling exposes you to a lot of people. It exposes you to different. I believe that at this stage, Africa, you know, can really do things a lot better. About establishing one of the things that's on professionalism. If you are to speak your own ethnic language, you find that a lot of confusion comes in. But by the time you set that aside, and then you think from a unified point of view, you think more in terms of things that can help us grow, then we benefit better. So looking at it from the point of view as Africans, we need to appreciate the roles that every one of us has to play. Within the fashion industry, you have the models, you have the stylists, you have the makeup artists, you have the fashion designers, and we all very stylists. I don't know how many stylists we have in the house, but without the stylist, your business can just get to the level where it is. Also looking in terms of the media should be part of our number one best friends, because you can have something so stunning, but if the world doesn't hear about it, then it also leaves you. You can also be here in Ghana and feel like, oh, this is the best the industry can achieve. But by the time you mix with other cultures, you see what other strong people within other industries are doing. It opens your eyes, it exposes you to better ways of doing things. So I still want to emphasize on the fact that we need one another. There are a whole lot of you here who have never been to Nigeria. You need to pack your bags and then, seriously, we also have, that won't be a problem.
Are we staying with you?
I tell you, that won't be a problem. But seriously, you need to come to Nigeria. You need to experience the beauty that Nigeria has to offer. By the time you infuse that into what and maybe a bit more prominent within West Africa, is this whole tendency to want to be a one-man show. We want to be a one-man army. Everybody wants to do it by themselves and to take all the glory. So I had the privilege some years back, to participate in an event in Thailand. And incidentally, so I think we happened to be, there were two Africans. It was a Nigerian and then some other persons from South Africa. But I noticed that the guys who handled backstage have been doing it for several years. The guys who were handling, the stage have been doing it for several years. So they said to me that even this person, wake him up from his sleep, he already has the script in his head. So everything comes out perfectly. That event was amazing. And even though at the end of the day, the Africans didn't get to win, but we took with us an experience that even after several years, it's something I've not been able to come over. But within Africa, it seems to be the other way round. So if we're to mention some of the very big fashion weeks we have in Africa, you find that to a large extent, one person is putting in some effort, but that's one person. And they say a tree can never make a within Accra. I've been within Accra before, and we had some fashion weeks happening at the same time. We had a major person who came in. Simon came in from South Africa. Yes, and for him it was like, how can we grow the industry? But the vibes we left with, which I'm sure everybody understands what I'm saying. He left a sour taste in the mouth. And at the end of the day, with all the efforts we've been putting in, it's only left us at a particular level. Because what you find happening is, like an event like this, you should have the notable and the key members of the press, together. You should have, government officials who can sponsor, everybody channeling their efforts into one place and getting better results. But when a competition is not very healthy, what happens is that we dissipate the strength that would have taken us much further than where we are. So I want to use this medium to appeal to us all. I know certainly that I need, Monte. I know he needs me. I've been to, the first time I was in Cameroon, it was some of the organizers there who pulled us in. It was also an incredible experience, and for them as well, it's something that's mutually of benefit to us all. But when we do this one-man show thing, it leaves us at one spot. So for what I say, let's set aside the envy, let's set aside unhealthy competition, Am I making, I don't know if I'm communicating. You know, let's set aside, let's look at how can I pull strength with my sister to make her brand grow, and then how can I also get the same vibes from her. But if at the end of the day we all build walls and high fences around ourselves, then we don't get the best, you know. So there's a need for networking, there's a need for us to harness our strengths. There's a need for also, giving the example from the event in Thailand, this show was, I mean, phenomenal. The experience was amazing, it was incredible, you know, and I discovered that they made a whole lot more because you have people from the world who wanted to be part of that experience, you know. But then coming back to Nigeria, like I said, I also know it feels like being an organizer or producing events. So you want to get sponsorship, you want to convince people to make payments and all of that. So when you do it all by yourself, I know the pressure. You can't get the very best experience. If you ask the designers in the house now, you know some of the challenges that designers are experiencing. When you want to mass produce, you know, you have certain equipment that you need. You can't have everything all by yourself. You can't have everything all by yourself. I had a very brilliant conversation with Ahmed Idris, you know, and we're talking about how he does these very stunning pieces that involves intricate beading. It could take like 3 months, you know. And I was saying in Nigeria, you have designers who do that as well. And of course, with the efforts that you put in, it makes your pieces more, you know, luxurious and then more high-end, and you get better funds and results at the end of the day. But of course, it takes a longer time. If you were to pull in a team of people who can do the same thing, he can definitely produce a lot more within that space of time. So what that means is that Idris, to have, Ahmed Idris, you know, to have a brand that's growing, that's thriving, that's, you know, making profits, he needs to be able to get the right people who can support him to get the best results that he requires. But if we do it all by ourselves, we don't get the very best of results. Now also, talking about it from the aspects of models, I'm excited to see the models in the house, the makeup artists. You know, now, not every model can be on New York Fashion Week. Not every model can be on Paris Fashion Week. And Africa has so much in terms of potentials that we haven't even we've not even started scratching on how much we have to benefit from one another. So I see that, for me personally, I have a conviction that Africa has some of the most amazing models in the world. So if you talk about Alec Weck, you talk about Ajak Ben, you talk about Oluchi and the rest of those girls. Walking on the streets of Ghana, you find a lot of those girls with potentials. But now the platform, you don't really have the platforms to help them shine like that. So what I'm saying is, if we don't grow our own industry, you find that there'll be a lot of broken dreams, because even in Europe, you know, how many blacks at the end of the day do you see doing the major fashion weeks? If you get a 10%, you know, we should really thank God. Do you understand? Because at the end of the day, you have to look at the various parts of the world who are also competing for the same spot. But if we as Africans, we celebrate our own, we give them opportunities to shine. So the strong models in Ghana can also experience South Africa, they can also experience Lagos, they can also experience Kenya, they can also be part of Swahili Fashion Week, they can also be part of Abidjan Fashion Week. Then it means the models are busier. The same thing applies to the designers, the same thing applies to the makeup artists. I don't know if I'm still communicating.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. But if, you know, so how many shows would you get to do if you're working strictly in Accra? How many shows for the Nigeria model would you get to do? Even if you do the big shows, but if you're traveling, then you get the real experience of what it means to be international, even within your continent. You know, and I also love like having Ahmed in-house. There are other people who want to come in and see that there's a need for us to come together. I'd like to say that we have various platforms, you know, the Fashion Week, social media, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, creating communities where like-minded people come together. It can help us to grow. We become better off for it. Within the short period of time I've traveled, I've seen some of our fashion industries grow. You know, so those who have experienced fashion weeks in the Anglophone speaking countries and in the Francophone speaking countries, you know there's a difference. There's a difference. And so when you want to be able to also function internationally, you need to be able to strike that balance. So I realized that by the time some of the models and designers traveled from one part from their countries to other parts, some of the excesses, they were able to cut down on those, you know, the whole drama that doesn't really have as much substance, you know. So thank you for the opportunity to share with us.